For example, when Stephen Miller takes the microphone at a press conference, I'm like, finally, somebody who's smart is speaking, and I might actually learn something instead of just a chick that Trump thought was hotly. The Michael Wolff book, we never talked about that. Can
okay,
we
please,
discuss
yes, we can go anywhere you want to go.
Okay, so I finally finished that book, and I've read, not intentionally, but I've actually read 3 Michael Wolff books. This one, Fire and Fury, one called Too Famous. That's a collection of his essays from the New Yorker, I believe. And then I read this one, All or Nothing, which is about the Trump campaign, of course. I'm such a fan of his writing, even though he's such a lefty, he's such a liberal, but I feel like he's smart enough that it doesn't dominate the book. I assume that if you read a kind of leftist book on the Trump presidency by, I don't know, like throw a name out there, just the run-of-the-mill kind of Trump-hating
right, Jeffrey Goldberg, and the
yes,
Washington Post political reporters or columnists.
Yeah, exactly. That it would be kind of intolerable to read if you had some sympathy for Trump.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's true.
But I think he's smart enough that I believe, okay, first of all, if you look at the cover of the book, it's kind of like a cool picture of Trump. So that he's already breaking with the practices of publishing right there, that you're supposed to make Trump look like a buffoon on the cover if your audience is Democrats. And so he has kind of a cool picture of Trump. But I think that the book is front-loaded with derogatory descriptions of Trump because he's assuming that the audience is people that hate Trump. So I think in the beginning of the book, he's like, here's what you want. We both hate Trump. We both look down on him. So here's some grist for that. But then as you get into the book, it's something more than that, isn't it?
Oh, yes. You can be a big fan and enjoy this book or enjoy almost everything that Michael Wolff writes. Now, he didn't write for the New Yorker. He wrote for New York magazine.
Oh, my bad. Okay, yeah.
But he is often extraordinarily fair or extraordinarily insightful, or gives the feeling of being extraordinarily insightful. So often the successful guru is one who can produce the feeling that you've just received a profound insight into life without actually being profound. Michael Wolff does give you the feeling that you're receiving profound insights, even if you're on the right or on the left or in the center. You read his books, and there is a steady supply of language and constructions and sentences and paragraphs that make you feel alive and as though you're receiving an insight that you hadn't received anywhere else. And so even if you're pro-Trump, you're going to enjoy much of the work of Michael Wolff, including this latest book, All or Nothing, How Trump Recaptured America. So Michael Wolff is fundamentally contemptuous of Trump, but there's enough seeming insight and fairness and powerful anecdotes that I think many pro-Trump people will still enjoy his work.
Here's how I think of his writing. I didn't necessarily think of it as I'm going to get new insights, like Michael Wolff is going to teach me a new way to look at politics or culture. I think of it as he's just very witty, and he has witty observations, and he has a lot of sources. You and I, we can pontificate and we can give our opinions, but like we don't really have inside info, or at least I don't. Whereas he really does. And that's one of the things that pissed people off so much about the Fire and Fury, was that Trump really went hard against that book, saying fake news. And you would have thought, if you watch conservative media, that he literally just made up the whole book. And it's been a few years since I read it, but my impression of the book was not that he was making stuff up at all.
Well, he does. My impression of the book is that he does not feel the same constraint to fact that the authors of the 2 other prominent books about the 2024 election demonstrate. So when I'm thinking about one by a reporter at Axios, Alex Eisenstadt, and then another as a male-female team, I love their book on the election. So when I read their books, I sense much more of a fidelity to fact. I think that Michael Wolff gives himself more room to say sketch patterns that is not 100% empirically validated. And there are some very sharp distinctions in the the books on the Trump presidency. So, for example, in Michael Wolff's book, he says that Donald has virtually no relationship with Melania, while in Alex Eisenstadt's book, it says that Melania plays a very important role in Donald Trump's life. So one of them is right. So I think there is a track record of some dubious assertions on the part of Michael Wolff that have got him castigated by the journalistic establishment. I think some of that is perhaps jealousy over Michael Wolff's success. I think that Michael Wolff has enough empirical attachment to reality that he's still very much worth paying attention to, but I certainly don't see the same fidelity to fact that you see in more scrupulous authors. So I take a middle position in Michael Wolff's fidelity to fact. So it would not shock me if Michael Wolff got a significant number of significant facts wrong in his book, including his assertion that Melania played virtually no role in Donald Trump's life except the occasional ceremonial role.
I don't think he pushed that line that much. It's definitely there in the book, this idea that there's something going on. He implies that they might have kept separate apartments at Trump Tower. I mean, maybe they did. Like that actually sounds.
I'm sure that's true, but he did. He did say that Melania essentially didn't play much of a role in Trump's life, or certainly didn't play virtually any role in the campaign. While Alex Eisenstadt's book said that Trump was talking to Melania pretty much every day during the campaign, and that he valued her advice. So one of them is right.
Well, right. I think the other book you mentioned perhaps just had a different source of information, or maybe more information on that particular topic. Whereas Michael Wolff, I think, on that front at least, perhaps he was just looking at the self-evident facts that she didn't really campaign with him. And any observer can say that this is not like the closest relationship. I mean, I like Melania Trump a lot. I think she sounds cute when she talks and everything. But the one thing, the assertion where he's on a little bit more shaky ground is he talks about Boris Epstein, who is Trump's lawyer, kind of right-hand man in some ways. I don't know if he still is, but he implies throughout the book that Boris Epstein was working with the feds as part of the January 6th case. And he never really gives any evidence for that. That is, to me, that was the biggest kind of tease, like without actual substance behind it.
And also, he did it in a strategic way. He said that this was widely assumed in Trump's camp. So that way, there is a time when widespread assumptions or beliefs, I think, are legitimate to report on and describe, even if you can't find empirical evidence for them. And so I support him just raising that.
Right. But you kind of got the feeling like that was going to be fleshed out a little bit. And here I am. I finished the book yesterday, and there was literally nothing. Just people thought that.
Right, but I think it was significant to raise simply that was a widespread assumption, just like it was, I think, legitimate for Skip Bayless to raise in his third book on the Dallas Cowboys, the 1995 season, their last Super Bowl victory, when he noted that there was a widespread assumption by the owner of the Cowboys, the coach of the Cowboys, so Jerry Jones, Barry Switzer, and much of the Cowboys locker room, that Troy Aikman was gay.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't know, but anyway, he hyped it up a little bit too much for my taste, but I think I agree it's legitimate to talk about. And just there's so many, like I said, Michael Wolff has sources. He actually seems to know people who are in power, and that's what makes his work great, is that he's a great writer, but he's also has info that we don't have, and that's why it's fun to read. The Fire and Fury, apparently his source was Steve Bannon, and I think that's part of the reason why Steve Bannon was booted from the first administration.
Yes.
And if you read Fire and Fury, it would seem to be from the perspective, a lot of it was like the omniscient perspective of Steve Bannon, and one can only assume that's because Steve Bannon told him, what was happening.
Yeah, and one of the anecdotes in Fire and Fury was that Nikki Haley had to give Donald Trump a blowjob to get her position as a UN ambassador.
Oh my God. I don't remember that.
Oh,
that's
man.
in the book.
Yes. And one of the interesting things about the latest book is that since about 2016, Trump is post-sexual, that no one believes that he's having sex anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
But you didn't pick up on that? I thought that was significant. I mean, I think for your average man, who he has sex with is the person that he most values and will have the most influence on him. And so I think that the sex lives of powerful people are legitimate bases for inquiry. And whether or not Donald Trump is having sex and who he's having sex with, I think is an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. But who did you say made that claim?
Michael Wolff said in his latest book.
In All or Nothing?
Yeah, if that's the title of his latest book. He said that since essentially 2016, Trump has been post-sexual.
Okay. I feel like he kind of suggested that might be true, but I don't recall him saying that so definitively.
Right. He said that's the assumption of the people around Donald Trump.
Right.
So they don't seriously believe that he's banging any of the beautiful women around him. So Trump recruits many females, particularly his female attorneys, on the basis of their looks. Like there's one, I think, Alina Harbour, who came to his attention because she was wearing a bikini at his Bedford resort. And so he often does have quite pretty female attorneys who aren't necessarily the most competent. But even though people recognize he loves to surround himself with pretty women, there is not the assumption among people close to him that he's having sex with any of them.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the big takeaways from this book is how enthralled he is of young, beautiful women with a certain look that he likes. And to me, I was kind of face palming reading about that, because what a stupid way to hire people. And it does bother me a lot. Like Alina Habba, but she might actually be an intelligent woman. So I don't want to say because she's beautiful, therefore don't hire her. But I do kind of feel like that about the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, that she is smart and competent, but I don't think she would be there if she weren't, a pretty young blonde. For example, when Stephen Miller takes the microphone at a press conference, I'm like, finally, somebody who's smart is speaking, and I might actually learn something instead of just a chick that Trump thought was hot,
Right. I somewhat disagree with you there. I think that Caroline Leavitt is very good at her job, but she's speaking to an audience with an average IQ of 100, while Stephen Miller still speaks to an audience with an average IQ of about 110. Right. Oh, this is I think the more important point is that it takes tremendous energy to accomplish anything in life, and that many of our sources for energy are not very nice. And so I think a normal person deplores the self-destructive public posting and allegiances of Donald Trump, for example, to beauty rather than competence among his lawyers. But you have to recognize that to accomplish as much as Trump does or as much as Elon does, it requires tremendous energy. And so they are tapping the energy that they get from engaging in self-destructive behavior to accomplish some formidable things. And so it's not just self-destruction that's here, that if you want Trump to be as energized and as strong as he is, you have to give him room for indulgence that for a normal person would be highly self-destructive. And so too with Elon Musk. So many of Elon Musk's public postings are ridiculous and make him look like an idiot. But without the energy that he gets from making these postings, he may not be able to accomplish the good things. And so people need a biochemical rush. People need energy. And many of our sources for energy are not the most reputable. And so in one sense, we need to take people as a whole package. Like Trump and Elon have both shown tremendous courage and tremendous energy and a tremendous accomplishment. And I think that they get much of that power, energy, and accomplishment from tapping into some less than reputable sides of their personality that for other people would be self-destructive.
Well, I think we can agree and end on that note that we all like to be around beautiful women. So you're right. I can't hate on Trump for that. If that's what keeps him going, then so be it. But thanks for having me on, Forty. Appreciate it.
Okay, bro.